Wars collectors, and welcome to another Bossk's Bounty video, and welcome to episode 178 of Ask Bossk Bounty. It's actually pretty crazy when I say that out loud. 178 episodes. That is pretty crazy, but I'm glad you guys are still enjoying it. I'm still enjoying making it. And if you do have a question for next week's episode, as always, you leave it in the comments section below. But thank you to everybody that has left a question for this week's episode. If you do happen to enjoy the video, hit the like button and subscribe if you're new. And before we get on to the first question, I just want to open up this on video because it was sent to my PO Box. PO Box 2154 Worthing BN12 9EW. I really do enjoy receiving things in my PO Box. It doesn't necessarily have to be a gift or anything like that, even just like a letter. You know, I've had postcards and things like that sent to my PO Box in the past, and it's just awesome hearing from you guys. So I have sort of cut this open ever so slightly so we can open the box. And there is a note inside. Let's get that out first of all. Dear Tim, just a quick note to say thanks for all the time you put into this hobby and how valuable your reviews, insights, opinions, and your undeniable role as a key ambassador for TVC collectors has become over the last few years. Please enjoy this Lumat figure as a small token of my appreciation. With best wishes, Jeremy, Aquilish Doug. Aquilish Doug is also a Patreon supporter. Thank you so much, buddy. And this Lumat, as I've said in previous videos, this came up on Tungori. I missed it. I was in Nashville at the time. But Jeremy, Aquilish Doug, picked an extra one up. And I wanted to pay for it, but it was already sent in the post. And there he is. Oops. Sorry, Cad Bane. Right, let's get Lumat out. Yeah, thank you, Jeremy. Really do appreciate this, buddy. Far too kind. And there he is, Lumat. This is one of those Ewoks that I needed. He's so rare on the secondary market in terms of, like, you know, being able to get him loose, because obviously a lot of people keep him carded. He comes with his staff here and a bow, which are really actually quite detailed. Much better than some of the other Ewoks that we have. And also 3 tiny little arrows as well, which fit in there. We'll just put those in right now. There we go. Put those in. Awesome. Yeah, so thank you very much, buddy. I really do appreciate that. This was one of the last remaining Ewoks that I needed for my loose collection. So we'll just put that there so he can stay there. So once again, buddy, thank you so much. Honestly, I really do appreciate it. And as you say, making videos is a hobby. I love doing the videos. And yeah, having you guys thank me in that way is just awesome. So I really appreciate it, mate. All right, then, so we've got some great questions this week, and a few of them are to do with the HasLab, the potential HasLab, or not potential HasLab, because we are getting a HasLab. We know we are at SDCC. We just don't know really what it is unless, you know, we believe all the rumours, but those will be coming later in the video. And the first question is from my buddy Chris at Toys of the Jedi, and he says, sat watching this episode during a power cut. And he says, the Power of the Jedi line brought us some great, if limited in articulation, sculpts. My question for you is, which figure from the line needs an update into TVC? Well, I think the one that I think needed doing the most, and my particular favourite, was Squidhead, and they are doing that, which is great news. There are some other figures that I would like them to do from the Power of the Jedi line. Bossk springs to mind. Maybe they could just repaint the X-Wing Luke, potentially. I don't know. That would be a really good one to have. This guy, I think his name's Elas Madak, and his buddy as well. There's 2 of them in there. That would be a good one to do. This one's a really nice figure, actually. But he would be great if he was redone for the Cantina aliens. I'm sure there's others. FX7 I could name, but I don't really think they actually need to do much to him. Just pack him on a vintage card and boom, you're crossing off one of the original 96 very easily. But yeah, I hope that's answered your question. Mandadlorian Santos says, Tim, love the content and appreciate the dedication to the TVC line. Question, do you know if we'll ever get a Camino Mandalorian trainers that help Jango Fett train the clone army? So I had a quick look up of these guys. I think they're called Koival Dar. I think that's how you pronounce it anyway. And basically, they're a bunch of Mandalorians, aren't they? I think when it comes to like the Mandalorians, if they're going to repaint anything, they'll probably do that for the ones that we saw in the Mandalorian Season 3. They'll do like a mixture of those, basically. Would I like to see the ones that you're mentioning there? Yep, I've seen sort of some artist impressions of them and what have you, and they look pretty cool. But I think if Hasbro are going to do any Mandalorians, then they'll do the ones from Series 3 first. Zachary says, question for next week, do you think Hasbro will do another fan stream this month to reveal a few things before SDCC? Or just wait until SDCC? Thanks and hope all is well. It's difficult to tell. I think if you'd asked me this question like 3 weeks ago, then I would have said, yep, I hope that we do get something before. But now it's only a month out. I'm thinking maybe we won't, which will be a bit disappointing because it has been quite a while since we've had any reveals, hasn't it? Maybe we do have to wait a month and they'll reveal quite a lot at SDCC. Maybe that's the case. But I do hope that there is going to be a stream, maybe even if it just reveals 1 or 2 items. But to be honest, it's looking like not. It looks like we'll be having to wait until SDCC. Saying that, after watching this video, they'll probably announce something. Deathwatch Mandalorian says, hey boss, great video. Question for next week. I was looking around, I'm in Australia, but I'm not sure how to buy cases of figures. I've seen lots of people buy them, but I'm not sure how. Do you ask the retailers directly? So basically some companies sell cases and they advertise them as such. So if you go onto Entertainment Earth, for example, you will see that you can buy cases of figures, like the whole wave. Some retailers in the UK will also do that as well. However, in the UK, we tend to buy solid cases. So, you know, a case of all the same figure. I'm sure there are other retailers around, but Entertainment Earth is the one that I know that definitely does that sort of thing. Patreon supporter Josh Butt says, great Ask Boss Bounty. As always, Tim, question for next week. You mentioned wanting Hasbro to make a new astromech. Would you want an Army Builder 4-pack or maybe 2, light side and dark side? Or would that disappoint you as a carded collector? So I think in general, I love the 4-packs, the loose 4-packs. I've got nothing against those whatsoever. I think the problem for me arises when they put like a named character in there that you would blatantly want carded, like the Chieftain, for example, the Tuscan Chieftain. I think a lot of people would like that character carded, and it's just a shame he's packed in one of those 4-packs. With astromechs, I think if they're just random droids, you know, not the main droids like R2-D2, then that would be absolutely fine. In fact, I think that's probably the best way to get them out. You know, lots of different droids rather than having lots of different droids on their own cards with sort of obscure names that, you know, they sort of blink and you'll miss them from the films. All right then, so we have 2 questions here about the Black Series and the Vintage Collection and how they sort of work together. And the first one is from JDCII28, and he says, hey BB, as usual, great content. Question for next week. Why does Hasbro release figures in the Black Series that don't automatically get a TVC counterpart? In Transformers, they have Masterpiece, Studio Series and Mainlines. Nothing gets released in Masterpiece or Studio Series that doesn't have a mainline equivalent. I know they are separate IPs, but it's the same company making the toys, so you'd think the different divisions could learn from each other. Thanks for your time and what you do. And Deezen Download says, never a bad video, good sir. Love this one. My question is, do you think the Black Series and TVC should share more? Like figure from Black Series that TVC needs and maybe more vehicles for Black Series? Or does this difference help both have that different vibe? So yeah, it's one of those things, isn't it? When you see a figure that's revealed for the Black Series, you instantly as a Vintage Collection collector go, oh wow, wouldn't that be great in the Vintage Collection? And same for the other way round, I guess. You know, when we get a figure in the Vintage Collection, Black Series collectors might think, oh, why don't they do that in the Black Series? And I think it really comes down to Hasbro, and I've said this before, Hasbro, in my opinion, struggles to sort of know their audience when it comes to the Black Series and the Vintage Collection and what those people actually want. I think they consider the Black Series as their sort of go-to main line that's in stores and things like that. You'll get a lot more new media figures in there. So a kid that's just watched the Mandalorian show or the Book of Boba Fett then goes into Walmart and can see those figures in the boxes or whatever on the shelves. Whether he can afford them or not is a completely another matter. This is where I think it all gets a bit strange. In terms of the Vintage Collection, they have what we call hardcore collectors to satisfy as well. So we want all of the weird Cantina aliens and Jabba's goons and all of those characters. And again, I'm not saying the Black Series collectors don't want those, but this is what Hasbro think. So when it comes to the Vintage Collection, you know, we can't necessarily have all of the figures that the Black Series get because we just haven't got space in the line. So, you know, when the Ahsoka show comes out, there might be a whole wave of 6 figures for the Black Series where the Vintage Collection might only get 3 or 4 maybe. So that's kind of how I see it, and unfortunately I don't see that changing. In terms of them sharing, you only have to look at the new Cad Bane figure to realise that, you know, in terms of at least the digital sculpts and design, they are definitely sharing, because this one looks exactly like the one that you can pre-order for the Black Series that's coming out next year. And they've done that with previous figures as well, such as the Ahsoka Corvus figure. The Bo-Katan figure was very, very similar. So it seems like they've worked out how to really scale down or scale up, depending on which one they make first. Nick Solo 85 says, hey Boss Bounty, I have a question for next week. Do you ever interact with any of the other big Star Wars figure collector channels here on YouTube? Well, I guess that depends on what you class as a big channel, because if you're talking about channels like, I don't know, like Toy Galaxy, for example, then no, I've never interacted with those guys. But I've got plenty of friends in the community that I interact with all the time. Obviously, we've got Nick from Only One Kenobi, you've got Usual Mike, you've got the guys over at the USR live stream, Scuba Pete. There's loads of people. I've been a guest on other people's live streams. I have people as guests on my live streams. I must do more live streams, actually. That reminds me. Thank you for reminding me. I do need to do more live streams. I have been a bit slack in that respect. So let's do more live streams. But yeah, short answer is yeah, I do interact with other channels. You know, there's some really big ones that I perhaps haven't ever interacted with. The Fwoosh, he's really big now. I met him at Toy Fair 3 or 4 years ago, but back then he probably wouldn't even know who I was. So there you go. CBZ, who is my latest channel member, so thank you so much for the support, buddy. He says, hi Bossk, another question for next time. Would you say a new Return of the Jedi Luke, either on the Jedi Knight card or Endor Capture card, is inevitable? The Black Series has one to go with the Death Star 2 Vader, and I think we need one for TVC. Also, they have some of the parts like the new arms and hips on the Jedi Academy Luke, and they could use to make the definitive Return of the Jedi Luke. What are your thoughts? Yeah, I don't think it's inevitable necessarily, because I think potentially they're quite happy with this one and maybe even this one because they reissued it. I'm of the opinion that even though this is a good figure and was a really good figure at its time, I would like a new sort of Jedi Knight Luke Skywalker, especially as we've got that new Death Star Darth Vader with the removable helmet. You know, a brand new Luke Skywalker Jedi Knight with all of the new articulation and everything like that would be very, very cool. Is it inevitable? No, I don't think so. I think perhaps they think they've got those ticked off. All right then, so we've got 3 questions about HasLabs, and Shocking Stuff says, hi Bossk, hope you and the clan are well. Question for next week. The question of re-releasing HasLabs has been put to you before, but I thought of a new angle and wanted your opinion. Correct me if I'm wrong, but all the TVC HasLabs have achieved full tier bonuses. Would a feasible way of re-releasing HasLabs be to only release the main item, e.g. just the crest without the Jawa Elder, Grogu's pram, etc.? This allows new collectors to purchase them, but still maintain a sense of exclusivity for the original backers. I'm just looking for a way to get the HasLabs without being raked over the coals. See, the last part of your sentence there is the bit that intrigues me, because first of all, I think you're absolutely right. If they were to ever release HasLabs again, I don't think they should include everything that was included in the first one to protect that exclusivity for the people that bought them at that time. However, re-releasing them, I can understand the barge being, I don't know, $2,000 at the moment. That's ridiculous on the secondary market. But how much would it cost for Hasbro to re-release that right now? It was $500, wasn't it, back in 2018 to back that? How much would it be now with inflation costs and things like that? I worry that would be a lot more, because I think part of the reason why the barge is so expensive is because it was quite exclusive, and people, you know, might want it as an investment rather than want it as like a display piece or whatever. So if you did re-release it, how many backers would it truly get? Because what would happen is the value of the original would go down. So then how many people would actually want to invest in one in the future if, you know, the market's going to be saturated? I don't know. It's an interesting thing, but yeah, 100%. I think if they were ever to re-release something like that, the barge or the Razor Crest, then for sure the things that came with it that made it exclusive shouldn't be released, in my opinion. Parsec 5150 says, hello Tim, another great episode. Here's my question for next week. As I'm writing this comment, the HasLab Dragonfly campaign has been going for only 25 hours and they are only 300 backers short of the 10k minimum. Safe to say the G.I Joe team will be 3 for 3, while our beloved Star Wars has been lacking in the Dream Projects category recently. What do you think it will take to get Star Wars HasLab a win? I'm starting to think that a price point under $300 would be helpful, but does the Star Wars license make this an apples to oranges comparison? Love to hear your thoughts. So yes, essentially I do think it's impossible to compare. It is like comparing apples to oranges. Without that license fee, the G.I Joe team can make 6-inch scaled vehicles at a lot cheaper than they would the Star Wars ones, basically, and so it is impossible to compare. What I would say is that the G.I Joe team do market them very well. They do promote them very well. They put out those cool videos with the cartoon and everything. Maybe the Star Wars team can't do that because of Lucasfilm, and they have to get it signed off from Lucasfilm, so maybe it makes it a bit more difficult for them. They can't pull out all of the stops to promote something like that in that way, because, you know, the G.I Joe team do a really good job. But yeah, I think that's the reason. You know, at the end of the day, the HasLabs for Star Wars, just like the figures, just like the vehicles, are always going to be expensive. What I would say is that if a vehicle was $300, I really wouldn't want it to be a HasLab. I think that should be like a Pulse exclusive maybe, or if they can get it into retail, do it that way basically. I don't think a $300 vehicle, especially Star Wars, should be a HasLab. And Jeffrey Horner says, hi Tim, question for next week. With the success of the G.I Joe 6-inch scale Dragonfly, do you think that means that a correctly chosen Black Series scale vehicle can be funded as a HasLab, like an ATST or an X-Wing, or dare I say a B-Wing? Thanks man, and keep up the good work. So this is kind of similar to the previous question, except we are concentrating on the Black Series scale specifically. And I think at the end of the day, you know, as we mentioned with the price, how much would a X-Wing be, and also how big would it be? I think they've said before, if they made an X-Wing Black Series scale, it'd have like a wingspan of like 4 foot, and then you've got the nose of the vehicle. It would be absolutely huge. So I think they do have to sort of take into consideration like shipping, you know, where collectors are going to put these things. I just don't think a lot of vehicles in the Star Wars universe are viable for a 6-inch scale. The Dragonfly looks to me like a similar scale to maybe the Razor Crest was, but of course the Razor Crest is 3.75. I could definitely see them doing like an ATST. That would be a pretty cool one, because that would stand tall rather than wide. So maybe they should look at things like that. But again, it comes down to the price, the marketing, you know, and what extras they give with it basically, because let's face it, they did mess up the Rancor quite a lot. Doug Steinman says, for next week, my question is, what is your #1 favourite figure and #1 favourite vehicle in TVC thus far released? And if you could choose one new figure and one new vehicle to be released, what would they be? Oh man, that is so difficult to answer, because, you know, when I think of my favourite, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the best. So I've put these two here, for example, you know, to show you the differences. Like, this card back and this figure means a great deal to me, and I actually love the figure itself. So this is one of my favourites, but is it like the best? You know, when you look at the Boba Fett Morak, that is an absolutely astoundingly good figure. When you even look at the Cad Bane, you know, all of these new figures that they're coming out, newly sculpted figures, they are absolutely amazing. And on any given day, I could say, you know, that is the best figure and that's my favourite figure. But in terms of vehicles, I always think, obviously, you've got the Barge and the Razor Crest, which would be obvious answers. But something that I think is underappreciated is the tank from Rogue One. I think that's a great vehicle. If you haven't got one of those, I highly recommend it. I thought that was a really good release. It was different, it was new. So I'm going to say that. In terms of something that I'd like them to do, I would definitely like the Darth Vader's TIE Fighter. I've said that lots of times before. And if we get like a new Hope Vader, for example, because we've got that new sculpt, then maybe they could do that. Maybe they could pack him in with that or something. That would be pretty cool. I've always said that vehicle. It's one that we haven't had in the vintage collection that was in the original Kenner line, and it badly needs updating. In terms of figures, it's got to be Luke Skywalker. It has to be a brand new Farm Boy Luke. Channel member Jay Russell says, hey BB, on a scale of 1 to 10, how epic will SDCC be for TVC? We're in a real lull right now on rumours, product, etc., especially after a whimper of May the 4th celebration. What are your thoughts if you were to foresee the future? So what do I think is going to be coming in SDCC? Well, Is it going to be epic? Well, we're getting a HasLab reveal, and it's not every day that you get a HasLab reveal, so that will hopefully be epic, and hopefully everyone will like it. In terms of like figures, then obviously I think some of the pipeline reveals, Pre-Vizsla, Krennic, hopefully Revan, there was a bunch of others. I think we'll probably see those, and then I think they'll save the new media figures from Ahsoka for a campaign while that series is on. That's what I think they'll do. Not 100% sure about it, but that's kind of how I'm foreseeing the future. Okay, then that's it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for watching, and also thank you to Aquilish Doug once again for the gift of Lumat. You have saved my life, buddy. He's going to go in the cabinet right now with all my other Ewoks. Thank you so much. As I said, thank you all for watching, and don't forget to leave your questions in the comment section below for next week's episode. Thank you to my Patreon supporters and channel members. Your support means a great deal to me, as always. Thanks very much for watching, and we shall see you on the next one.